Which way do you do this now? Is it? That. Oh, no, going the wrong way. Giving it all away. Okay, well, first off, just it's the last talk, you all say thank God. But thank you so much for coming out. We've been very, very lucky with the weather and everything else, and hopefully it'll keep tomorrow as well. And just thanks a million, because, you know, we've been organising this for an awful long time, and you just hope that people will want to come along and enjoy it. And certainly I've had a great day anyway, and I hope you have enjoyed it as well. And just again, as I said this morning, a huge thank you to Emma, who sort of really drove the thing along. And if it wasn't for her, none of this would be possible. I would say as well that sometimes when you're writing history, it can be like pulling teeth. And then sometimes it's very enjoyable, and this was one of the ones I really enjoyed doing this one. It's not a period I usually do, but maybe that's why, but I really enjoyed doing this one. So on the 4th of June 1949, a letter from Father Patrick Gaffney, who's the Vice President in St Pat's College south the road. This letter was published in the Anglo-Celt in the local paper, bemoaning that Eoghan Rua O'Neill, a general of the highest military rank and repute, lay buried in an unmarked grave in the ruins of the ancient St Mary's Abbey at Cavan, unrecognised, unhonoured, and without commemoration or memorial. To address this unsatisfactory situation, it was decided to form an executive committee to organise a week-long event in Cavan in the autumn of that year, 1949, to mark the tercentenary of his death. And so this is what I'm going to look at here today. So it was reported in that issue of the Celt in his letter, that the way? Yeah. With a view to holding a fitting commemoration this year and to providing a suitable permanent memorial worthy of the man in the occasion, an inaugural meeting was held in Cavan recently, and a committee appointed to further these objects. As a result, it was decided to hold a commemoration at an early date in the autumn and to erect a decent permanent memorial to Eoghan Rua. As Primate Hugh O'Reilly, Archbishop of Armagh, was intimately associated with Eoghan Rua in his work for the Confederation, and as he too lies buried among the ruins of St Mary's Abbey, it was the opinion of the meeting that it would be fitting and proper that Eoghan Rua O'Neill and Primate O'Reilly should be jointly honoured in a single memorial. Now that doesn't happen. Poor old Hugh O'Reilly gets dropped from the programme, but you know. So the executive committee which was formed was chaired by Father Gaffney, the man who wrote that letter. The joint secretaries were Father Charlie Travers, who was also taught out in St Pat's, and Mr T Hughes from Cavan. Some of you will probably recognise some of these names or may have known the people. What was described in the Anglo-Celt as the very important financial end, that was in the expert keeping of Michael Smith, Coleman's dad, who was the secretary of the council, and Dr J.F. Sullivan. The other members of the executive committee were P. Smith, I think it was Philip Smith, solicitor, Liam O'Kelly, who's from Ballybor, a well-known local historian, who also taught in the Gaeltacht in Glan in the 1920s, Senator Paddy Baxter, Captain Cahallan, Superintendent J. Murray, a guy called Faye Lovett, and Willie O'Hanlon. Lieutenant J. Dowling, who was representing the Army, served as an adjunct member of the executive committee. And this group worked towards the establishment of parish committees throughout Kilmore, and they were taken in the Leitrim parishes as well, to help fundraise for what became really an extremely ambitious series of celebrations and commemorations. So the Celt, on the 2nd of July, and so much of what we have comes from the Celt, but from other places as well. The Celt reports on the 2nd of July, in the absence of Father Gaffney, Senator Paddy Baxter presided at a meeting of the committee on Friday. So Father Charlie Travers gave a resume of an interview with Major General McNeill and other Army officers for the purpose of gaining the cooperation of the Army in the commemoration ceremonies. And these officers made many useful suggestions, one of which was the changing of the name of the committee from Eoghan Rua Commemoration Committee to Eoghan Rua O'Neill Memorial Committee. Now that smacks of Monty Python. I mean, I don't know what really the difference was, but you know, so people like to put in their tuppence worth, I suppose. And so it was also decided to ask the Spanish ambassador and the Irish Minister of Defence to come on board as patrons. I mean, they weren't aiming low. Like, you know, from word go, they were going high. And they were also going to ask historians like Bridie Smith Brady, who used to write in the Celt, and Dr. Philip O'Connell, who was a well-known historian, to write pieces about Eoghan Rua in the press in the run-up to the thing. Now, the Spanish ambassador didn't come on as a patron, but Thomas O'Higgins, who's the defence minister, did, and Archbishop Dalton of Armagh also came on, and Major General Liam Archer. So they had hefty patrons in this, and the Spanish ambassador did appear on the big day of the celebrations. On the 19th of July, about 2 weeks after this report in the Celt, on the 19th of July, Father Travers wrote up on behalf, and it's on headed paper, the Eoghan Rua O'Neill Commemoration Committee. So they didn't go to the Eoghan Rua O'Neill Memorial Committee, they stuck with commemoration. And so he wrote up a kind of a position paper explaining who O'Neill was, what the issue, what was the big deal about him, and to send out to people to get them interested, to give the context, to explain what was going on. And so he signed off this letter that he sent into the committee saying, I am off next week and aim now to try to organise local committees. So they start going out to the local parishes and parish halls and schools and start giving talks about O'Neill and, build up things. And so, like Father Noel Fay, who's another teacher in St. Pat's, gives a lecture in a national school in Brusky about O'Neill, and he was claiming that O'Neill's army trained in Brusky between 1640 and 49. Now, O'Neill didn't come here till 42, so he was getting a bit ahead of himself. But anyway, paper never refused ink, as they say. But the important thing was that lecture was followed by the formation of a committee to fundraise, which was what they were all about. That's what they wanted. People out in the areas fundraising all the time. Similar event took place in Ballyjimsduff in early August, and another in a restaurant on Dame Street in Dublin on the 18th of August for the Cavan Man's Association. And that one worked out well because the Cavan Man's Association donated £100. So that was well worth a trip up to Dublin for that. Now, O'Neill quickly grabbed a hold of the public's imagination, and in a piece written for the Celt on the 6th of August 1949, Archbishop Hugh O'Reilly is still being included in the memorial plans, but the heading in it is just Eoghan Rua O'Neill. The O'Reilly doesn't make the headline. And as I say, for whatever reason, they drop O'Reilly from the whole thing. Maybe he just wasn't as romantic a figure or whatever it is. He gets dropped anyway. But he's not entirely forgotten, because on the 8th of October, the commemorations last from the 2nd to the 9th of October. And on the 8th of October in the Celt, the Holy Trinity Priory in Kilnacrot, they write about O'Reilly having lived and died on the Premonstratensian Abbey in Trinity Island. And so they put in a wee note about this, don't forget Hugh O'Reilly, who was also around at this time. So they don't want him to be totally forgotten. Now, I think this was last year or the year before. It was. There's John Paul Feely. Oh yeah, he's waving in at me. Coleman Smith came in. I think was it last year, Coleman, or the year before? Last year. And his dad, as I say, was one of the treasurers in the on the committee, and he had a box and. This is us here. I don't know what I'm doing in the picture. I just must have been wandering around and as I jump into the picture. But Coleman donated this box of material. It's meticulous record keeping. It's extraordinary stuff. And Coleman, and this came from the committee at the time in 1949. And Coleman rightly thought, well, what's going to happen to this material? And so did the absolute brilliant thing and donate to the library. So it's people's generosity like that, and you never know what's out there. And so I made great use of it for this, so it was a great help to me. So the timing was probably lucky, but it was very good timing as well. So what I was able to get from that is this parish fundraising goes into overdrive, and sums of money are quickly flowing into the committee's coffers. And through various collections, subscriptions, parish collections, the committee raises £1,675, which in 1949 is a substantial figure. Baileyborough Parish, a good town parish, they raise almost £48 from their collection. Ballintemple gives almost £47. But the highest parish contributor, probably not surprisingly, is Cavan town itself. They raise over £256 in theirs. And then the Leitrim parishes, they're not connected to Cavan as such, so they probably give a wee bit less. Drumreilly Lower gives £8, Carrigallen just over £8, Dromela gives £9. And Dromela would be a small wee parish, Carrigallen would be a bigger one, but somehow Dromela ended up giving more. And then, as I said, the Cavan Men's Association give £100. And then down to quite small figures in some way, Modjabon Creamery, they give 19 shillings. I mean, these guys are probably being hit in their parish, and then they're being hit at work, and then they're being hit by a guy coming to the door, and they're being hit every which way. There's 3 MPs from Northern Ireland, a guy called Cahir Healy, another fellow called Cunningham, another guy called Joseph Stewart, and Joseph Stewart speaks later on at the event. They each donate £5 each. Philip O'Connell denoted Cavan historian donates £1. And on a personal level, I was delighted to find my great-grandfather, Philip Smith from Druncrav, just out the road, gave 2 and 6, fair play to him. And my uncle, my granduncle, my dad's godfather, Matt Smith, gave 2 shillings. So fair play. So I feel I'm invested in this. But the committee was not afraid to confront those whom they felt was not giving sufficient respect to the event and are not supporting it in a fitting manner. And on the 3rd of October, a day after the week-long event had begun, the manager of the Munster and Leinster Bank in Cavan gave a cheque of £5 to the committee. The committee was not impressed with this. I think was probably because they couldn't have missed that this was happening. And surely they'd gone looking for money at some stage. But the bank realised a bit too late, oh geez, this is a bit of a big deal, we should give them something. So they sent in a £5, and so this is the letter that went back. My committee feels that this contribution from a business organisation which enjoys the support not only of the committee but of the class of the community which sponsors the organisation is unworthy of the donors and not at all commensurate with subscriptions received from the farming and business communities of this county. The members of the committee, therefore, expressing their displeasure, have directed me to return the contribution. Whoa! Ouch! They weren't fellas coming in looking for a loan the next week, huh? So extraordinary. I mean, wouldn't you think you just take the money? But no, they were not going to just take the money. I would have just taken the money. But anyway, now preparations continued throughout the summer. Posters were printed, and this is a poster. It's out on show in the hall out there. When you think, it's a wee lightweight poster, and it survived from 1949. Incredible. That was from Fiacre's. Where's Fiacre? Was it your dad or your uncle had that? It was some way connected to you. Yeah, so that was given, I think, to Father Liam Kelly, and he brought it in here. So it came from the Moore family originally, so it was kept safely for all that time. A note in the Anglo-Celt on the 13th of August stated that members of ex-LDF and LSF and members of ex-Servicemen's Association and GEA from Cavan Town and immediate surroundings are requested to attend a meeting in the Town Hall regarding the organisation of the week-long event. So again, there's big buy-in, military, GEA, all the big organisations that are already there, getting them involved. And on the 3rd of September, the Celt reports that preliminary training for the military tattoo and pageant in connection with Eoghan Rua commenced on Sunday last in the military barracks when over 100 men took part in pike and musket drill under Lieutenant Dowling. And the training will advance another stage on Sunday next when the Battle of Benburb will be rehearsed in Breffni Park. I mean, when you think, imagine going up to Breffni now and saying, can we put a load of horses and things on Breffni Park? And Jesus. The event also had the full support of the local authority. I was looking at the minutes upstairs a few weeks ago. And Cavan County Council, in their meeting on the 20th of September, unanimously decide that official cognizance be given for the forthcoming commemoration of the tercentenary of the death of Eoghan Rua O'Neill, and recommend that the Council's officers afford all possible assistance and cooperation to the organising committee. And then it was then proposed by Paddy Baxter, the Senator, that the Council present an address of welcome to the President, because President Sean O'Kelly is coming down. So the events opened on Sunday the 2nd of October with the military and historical exhibition in the courthouse here, and that ran for the week up until Sunday the 9th. That's the summary of events for the week. The items on display in the courthouse, they had an extraordinary amount of stuff. They have armour, weapons, historical records, flags, and all sorts of stuff dating from the mid-17th century. They also had modern weapons used by contemporary Irish Defence Forces. Altogether, there was over 150 exhibits on display in the courthouse during the week, with pride of place being given to a 17th century flag used by the Confederation, which bore the image of the Rosary. And it was discovered in Kilkenny in 1846 by Reverend C.P. Meehan. He's one of those names, if you ever look at you see his name coming up. And it was transferred to the Dominican community in Tala. Prior to 1949, so it was for about 100 years after its discovery, was never shown in public. And that's it there. That's from the Indo. And the fella second to the left there is Gerard Hayes McCoy, who was one of the people who spoke here at that time. He was working in the National Museum at the time, but eventually became a lecturer in Galway in the university there. There was also a basket-hilted sword and Bellarmine jar, which were discovered together at Cloughoother Castle before you got there, Con, which were believed to have dated from the period of Eoghan Rua's death. There was also replica pikes, military armour, coinage, all sorts of things included there. Also included were replica maps, letters, portraits, photographs and manuscripts, including there was a contemporary of O'Neill called O'Mellan, a friar, and he describes the Battle of Benburb in his diary. So they had a few pages from that. They had printed proclamations. They had a copy of Bedell, I say Bedell as well, a copy of Bedell's Bible from 1685. And then they had a selection of books dealing with the 1641 Rising, like some of the early books, like Henry Jones's book. Now, these were copies of the front page. So there was a copy of Henry Jones's book, a copy of James Cranford's Tears of Ireland, and these different things. And they were given the title. There was headings in the book as the wee catalogue as to what's everything, and the heading for these particular books was British propaganda. So there was a little note that went along with it saying these documents were intended to stir up English feelings against the Irish people, and in this were very successful. So that, certainly so. Funnily, actually, I saw, just happened to see in a catalogue the other day a copy of James Cranford's Tears of Ireland from 1642 going for €200. I was very, very tempted, but I value my life, and bringing that home, so look what I bought, darling. That wouldn't play well. So there were also a number of chalices on display, including this one that belonged to Hugh O'Reilly, which was 1628. That's in the cathedral here. This one, the O'Rourke Chalice from 1619, which is kept out in Butler's Bridge. And then this one called the Campbell Chalice, which is a bit later, and was named after this guy, Bishop of Kilmore, who's called the Piper Bishop of Kilmore, because he travelled the diocese dressed as a musician. No one would think he was a bishop, you see. Some of the modern military equipment which was on display outside the courthouse, around the sides and around the back, included a variety of machine guns, anti-tank guns, hand grenades, not live I hope, armoured cars, wireless radio sets, even a wireless radio set, 1949, nice thing to have a look at, mobile surgical unit, all sorts of things. There's also an 84-page souvenir programme. Oh, actually, that's some of the stuff in the exhibition. That's the courthouse. And you can see the chalices in the middle there. You see some of the chalices there. There was also this souvenir programme, 84 pages. Much of the content, as Peter McGovern pointed out to me earlier on, is all advertisements nearly. There's loads of ads in it. But there's a few articles in it as well by Lieutenant Dowling and Philip O'Connell. And there's 4 awards from the Minister of Defence, O'Higgins, Major General Liam Archer, and Archbishop John Dalton. And that's the cover of it. It's a lovely cover. It's very nice, isn't it? So there's a copy of that in the case outside there on the floor as well. Now, that exhibition in the courthouse was open daily from 5 to 9, so after work, so people could come in then. And it cost £1 for adults and 6p for children. And that fee also gained visitors admission to what they call the Agricultural and Industrial Exhibition, which was taking place in the Town Hall, also opened from 5 to 9 during the week. Now, the exhibition in the Town Hall was also an opportunity for Ireland, which was a newly made republic in 1949, to demonstrate, we're forward thinking, we're scientific, we've got all the best new gear, we're doing all these things, isn't it great? And whatever happened, it must have been a kind of last minute sort of a job getting everything set up, because in the Celt, that particular exhibition, the people were commended for the manner in which they overcame the shortage of space and time allotted to them to erect and dress their stalls. So it must have been a quick change to get it done. And the Celt then recommended that the exhibition should be repeated every year. There's no reason why it shouldn't be held annually in Cavan town. Now, I don't think it did, and the entire event, I think, was also an opportunity to leave in the past the tragedy of the orphanage fire in 1943, in which 35 children and 1 lay adult died, which was probably the last reason, aside from football, that Cavan had been making the national headlines. So maybe it's just and interestingly, there's a meal on the 9th of October on the Sunday for the dignitaries and so on, and they are brought to the convent, which have been newly rebuilt, and there's a discussion about the fine new building that it is and so on. There was a series, I should say, of 6 history lectures from the 2nd to the 7th of October, also held in the courthouse. And the lectures were preceded by a short film of the Battle of Benburb pageant, which had been held in Dublin in 1945. And the lectures they've got a good lineup. We couldn't get any of these people now, unfortunately. But Gerard Hayes McCoy talking about Eoghan Rua as a Confederate leader. Colonel A.T. Lawler talking about Eoghan Rua as a general. The Battle of Benburb by Lieutenant Dowling. He's a fellow, we've seen him a few times, he's come up. Diarmuid Murtagh, the Siege of Arras, I'm not quite sure, but that place anyway. Captain G.S. Cox talking about the enigma of Ben Burb, and then Canis Mooney, who was from Drumshambo, talking about the Franciscans. He was a Franciscan himself, talking about the Franciscans and the Confederate War. So a very good lineup of speakers there. But then after that, and I'll come back to that in a few minutes as well, on the Saturday and Sunday, the 8th to the 9th of October, Breffni Park was one of the main places to be. Taking place there was what was described as a military tattoo and an historical pageant. There were military displays featuring the massed bands of the Eastern Command, infantry, cavalry, artillery, engineers, signals and military troops of the day. There was also marching bands, demonstration of modern battle techniques, reenactments from history and Irish mythology, such as the destruction of Cruncruach by St. Patrick. That was obviously a West Cavan thing. Miles O'Reilly's fight against the English forces at Finney in 1644, and Andrew Campbell, who was that piper bishop. I imagine there was a fellow walking around with pipes saying, "I'm a bishop, don't tell anyone," you know. There was also a fireworks display, first aid demonstrations, and what was described as the pièce de résistance, the reenactment of the Battle of Ben Burb between the troops of the border, is what they call it, and the Dublin FCA. So adults paid 4 shillings for that and children were half price. The military got in half price on the Sunday because they'd been doing so much work. Can you imagine, though, again, like the state of Breffni after that? It must have been a right mess. But again, just shows the buy-in from the local communities. You know, they had the GA involved, they had their support and so on. On Sunday, the 9th of October, was really an extraordinary day of ceremony and a prodigious feat of organisation, and that really capped the entire thing off. There was what they called a military mass at 9 a.m. in the cathedral on the Sunday. Basically, I think that was a smaller mass to get that the military guys, the soldiers and all the people who were involved, that they could get mass out of the way quickly. And then there was what they called the high mass at 11:30. Which was presided by the Archbishop of Armagh, John Dalton, who was later a cardinal. President Sean T. O'Kelly was there. Eamon de Valera, who was in opposition at the time, was there. And any amount of representatives from the worlds of the Roman Catholic Church, politics and local government. Anyone was there. And I think these are from some of the films that we have. So there's some that coming in. You see the scouts are giving them a guard of honour coming in. There's the Archbishop going in there now. And so that's how many clergy there are just coming into the main body of the cathedral there. Yeah. So, again, it was absolutely packed. Following Mass, President O'Kelly goes down to the Abbey and he walks through this archway. Isn't that lovely? I love that. It was very nice. They should have kept it. So he goes down through that archway up to the Abbey, and he's received with a 14-gun salute when he comes in. And there he makes an address. That's another picture. That's him coming out again. You can see him there. See, with the wee white head just coming out there on the top left there. I should talk. I love a wee white head. There he is giving the oration there at the foot of the tower. And then that's the plaque itself there, which is still there. And it reads, in the cemetery, it's in Irish and English, and it says, in this cemetery lie the mortal remains of Eoghan Rua O'Neill, General Commanding of the Army of the North, 1642-49, the victor of Ben Burb, 1646, in the name of the Father, Son and Holy Ghost, advance. So they're not going amen, they're going advance. And following that unveiling, the President is escorted to a platform just in front of the courthouse here, where at 3 o'clock there's this extraordinary pageant of marching, which I'm sure some of you have been watching some of the footage out here of the incredible amount of people who are going through. That's them up on the plinth in front of the courthouse. You can see De Valera there on the left and O'Kelly there in the middle there. And taking part in that, it was described as a most imposing and spectacular march of Army and FCA units, the old IRA, civilian organisations from north and south of the border, with 100 bands and banners. That's led by an advance guard of armoured cars and Army motorcyclists. And again, you can see some of that in some of the clips. The civilian section of the parade was estimated to have 12,000 people from the 6 counties taking part. Extraordinary figures. And was judged to have been the most colourful part of the event. Marching to various bands, groups in the parade included anti-partition associations. Again, I saw a flyer or a banner in there for that. AOH clubs carrying banners with images of St. Patrick, others of Eoghan Rua at Ben Burb. And special pride of place in the parade was given over to groups from Tyrone, and this contingent was led by the Blackwaterstown and Ben Burb O'Neill Warpipers, with a special attention being given to the Servite. There was a Servite community up there, to the Servites from the community based in Ben Burb, marching in their black robes and cowls, and they had a banner adorned with the red hand of Ulster, on which read Sancta Maria, which, as we heard earlier on, was probably the battle cry. And these are some. So there's the armoured cars. I mean, you can imagine, like it's very impressive now. I mean, 1949, you can imagine what it must have been like. And again, there's an old IRA banner there. The Scouts going by. Again, the red hand. Oh, these are the Ben Burb guys. You can see Ben Burb. They're not holding up very well now. That fella needs to straighten up. And you can see there's some of the Servites going along there as well. And then here's more guys coming from Ben Burb with a big banner of O'Neill on it, and on it goes. And this is lovely. The County Museum found in the Pig House collection, which was, if anyone remembers, Phyllis Farris, who was a big collector. She had this flag and they had it in storage and had it redone, and it's now hanging in the exhibition room where cons, finds and stuff are. So it's a lovely thing, and just found just in the nick of time really for all of this as well. So it's great to have that. The number 1 Army Band were on hand to provide music, piped through a series of loudspeakers along the route. And then, as I say, following the parade, the President and other dignitaries had dinner at the convent across the way, where the President was introduced to the Mother Abbess and her community. Now, Gerard Hayes McCoy, writing in an issue of Studies later on that year, wrote that emphasis was laid on the fact that O'Neill was a great soldier, but he has another claim to greatness that, if it was mentioned at all, I think it's mentioned a lot, was but lightly touched upon. Eoghan Rua was a great Irish unionist. In what they mean by that is, in terms of getting the 32 counties. In this time when we speak so much of the unity of our country, this claim is something that we should remember for him. And accordingly, the Eoghan Rua tercentenary celebrations also contained a very strong political element. The Republic of Ireland Act in 1948 had declared Ireland to be a republic, and that act was signed into law on the 21st of December 1948 and came into force in April 1949. And the act severed the statutory role of the British monarchy in relation to Ireland by transferring the powers formerly in the hands of the British monarch to the Irish president. So holding an event like this in Cavan, an Ulster county right on the border, in the earliest days of this newly founded Irish Republic, it was an opportunity for the Irish nationalist movement to agitate and lay claim to the 6 counties of Northern Ireland. And by God, did they do so. Like, for example, the souvenir programme that I mentioned a minute ago, that had loads of ads in it. There's a full-page ad from the Irish Anti-Partition Association, and the message in that programme said, "The land of Eoghan Rua, i.e. the northern counties, must yet be freed." A note in the Celt on the 17th of September discussed the upcoming commemorations, and in the Celt they wrote, "Today most of our country is free, thank God, although 6 of our counties are still in bondage. But during that first week of October, free Ireland and patriots from the north will commemorate a great Irishman." And then on the 6th of October, the Irish press, noting incorrectly that it was the anniversary of Eoghan Rua's death, they were a month early, but look at they stated, "Freedom is yet to come to the greater part of the province that bred him, and the invader's flag still flies over Tyrone. But the omens are bright for the future. There will, with God's help, be no need for another Ben Burb or for the genius of another Eoghan Rua. Unity will be restored by other methods." The invader's flag is all quite fiery. And then again, the Celt on the 8th of October, the Celt used to come out on a Saturday. See at the bottom, "Ulster Resurgence salutes Eoghan Rua." They ran the same ad the previous week, but they didn't have that bit in it. But then they stuck that bit in it then when they ran the ad the next week. And O'Kelly, when he gave his address, which was bilingual down at the Abbey, he said, "We here assembled in many thousands from Ulster, as well as from other parts of Ireland, by the graveside of the illustrious Eoghan Rua O'Neill, proclaim that this partition must not last and shall not last. We declare that the 6 counties stolen from Ireland are ours. We claim them for Ireland. We say that those counties and the people who inhabit them are Irish, and that no power has any moral right to hold them against the wishes of the vast majority of the whole Irish people. Let us, in memory of the illustrious General Eoghan Rua O'Neill, the tercentenary of whose death we are commemorating here and now, promise to do all that is in us, all that in us lies, to win back the 6 partitioned counties and their peoples to Ireland. So there's no mistaking what's going on here. A group from Fermanagh have a banner which reads "Fermanagh for the motherland," assumingly being the Republic of Ireland, not Britain. Branches of the Anti-Partition League have banners which carry slogans like "End Partition" and all these sort of things. The Drumreilly Upper James Connolly Club from Leitrim, they carry a banner with the words "Unity and Liberty." And it was noted during the parade that the 6 county contingent were given an enthusiastic greeting by the thousands of onlookers who thronged the roads and streets. Now, toasting O'Kelly at the meal in the convent, Monsignor Maguire, who is the president of the organising committee, he remarked that the president, O'Kelly, was the living expression of our determination to win back from alien rule the most historic of our territory and the most cherished of our people. So the living expression, O'Kelly had been involved in 1916, so that's what he's getting at there. And O'Kelly, in response, promised to work for the complete liberation of our motherland. In an address made on behalf of Cavan Urban Council, Miss M. Brady stated that we express the hope that your next visit to the ancient province of Ulster will be on the occasion of the reintegration of our national territory, when the effective control of your excellency shall extend not over 26 counties, but over the whole island of Ireland, its islands and territorial seas. Philip Smith, who is the vice chair of the committee, said in his address that this was a day that they should shout aloud their claim to the title of Ulster, that they should resent the claim of any clique in Belfast to call themselves Ulster as if there were no others. And speaking to applause from the assembled crowd, Smith declared that Ulster is ours and always will be ours. Joseph Stewart, a Tyrone MP who had given £5, stated in his address, which was quite fiery, democracy in the 6 counties is a veiled tyranny, a sham and a stupid sham. Well, I've never seen a good sham, but an outrage on any conception of freedom, justice and humanity, before calling in his concluding remarks for a cherished ideal of a united and completely free Ireland. There's very little history being talked about here. They're going a different way with all this. Other speakers include Senator Margaret Pearse, who's a sister of Pádraig Pearse, General Mulcahy, who's the Minister of Education, Father Gaffney, who's the Chairman, Monsignor Gino Parro, who is from the Apostolic Office, Senator Paddy Baxter. And I mean, Paddy Baxter, his brother was killed at Selton Hill in Mohill in 1921. And Margaret Pearse, obviously, Pádraig was killed as well. And in an Irish press report on the event, and the Irish press report on the event about Eoghan Rua O'Neill's tercentenary, the headline was "British robbed 6 counties." There's a slightly misleading headline on that. But in that report, Margaret Pearse noted that she was just as much at home when she crossed that accursed border as she did in Dublin. And Baxter, in his speech, was slightly more temperate. He noted that of the stories of Irish arms in past generations, one might say that if there were pages that were glorious, there were many that were sad and tragic. And Paddy and Margaret both knew the truth of that, because they both lost close family members. In a piece written in the Celt on the 15th of October, the following week, it was an anonymous piece written by a man from the south, is what he's called. He writes about it and he says that never before have I seen men and women so visibly moved. Their eyes sparkled with a fire which proclaimed that the spirit of patriotism has never ceased to enliven the blood of our people. And then he goes on to say, the thousands who come from that part of our island home, still politically under the heel of the Gael, this was the day they had waited for so long. This was the opportunity to show the world that they were of one mind, one spirit and one ambition to make their beloved land a nation once again. And then he went on to describe the 9th of October, this big day, as a celebration for the people from the 6 counties who had to deal, and I quote, year after year with that travesty of pageant, the 12th. So this was their version of the 12th, that's what he was saying. The week was a huge success and was recognised so nationally, with a headline of a report on the opening day of the commemorations in the Irish Independent, reading Cavan's great tribute to Eoghan Rua. And there's reports in the Ulster Herald, the Donegal News, the Irish Press, the Indo, Irish Examiner, Fermanagh Herald, Derry People and many more. Now according to the Celt, an estimated 100,000 people visited Cavan during that week, with 75,000 coming in on the Sunday. Now, that's an extraordinary figure. And to put that in context, I was checking with Joanna Hayes, the tourism officer here, during the Fla years, was that 2010 to 12 or whenever it was, what was the highest numbers you reckoned was in Cavan on any of those days? And she reckoned about 45,000. So 75. Now, even if that's an exaggeration, that's still, and we all know like the work that went into organising those. You can imagine what was going on there. Now, the Sunday, as I say, was the definite highlight of the week, the 9th. And the day was blessed with what was described in the paper as heaven-sent weather. The town was richly decorated for the festivities, with green flags displaying the harp, miles of bunting crisscrossing the main routes of the parade, and many shop windows gaily and appropriately dressed. There's a local man who many of you would know called Kevin McDermott. He often writes on the Old Irish Photos Facebook page, or Old Cavan Photos. And he wrote, Jonathan, I think, had put something up, and he wrote from that. He remembers it, he was 13 at the time. And he said, "My one abiding memory is the final parade around the town and the numerous marching bands that attended. From Eoghan Rua Terrace, where he was from, we had a bird's eye view of the Army Tattoo in Breffni Park. And it was the first time I saw real live searchlights operating." The first time. How many times did you see searchlights operating? And then Diarmuid Murtagh, the guy who gave the talk during the week, was a very, very well-known military historian, and his son Harman is also a well-known military historian. And in fact, he reworked some of his father's stuff. You may have seen it. Four Courts Press published a book around, I think, the Jacobite, Williamite wars, that Harman took Diarmuid's papers and sort of rewrote them and put them into book form. But I emailed Harman a week or two ago, just sort of saying, "Hey, this is on, and your dad spoke at this, and he said he emailed back immediately within half an hour. I'd say he got back to me, and he said he was 4 in 1949, and he was at it, and he remembers about it, which I don't know how, but he says here, "I have a few vivid memories of it. I remember a march past of troops." So he's obviously talking about the big things going on here. "For it, we were located on the street outside the courthouse, but were stopped by the military police from getting into the courthouse bit as a viewing point." Was he trying to get up with Sean T. O'Kelly and all these guys? "I think my father put me on the shoulders. I remember being at the tattoo, which was at night. All I can remember of it is lots of campfires burning. At another stage, I took my seat on an anti-aircraft gun." That would have been around here. "And there was a display in models of military ambulances with miniature doctors, orderlies and nurses, I think, carrying out a rescue. I love that, of course. I love this bit. I don't recall being at my father's lecture or where we stayed. That was the boring bit. I remember the guns. That's what I remember." And it's amazing, like I was doing searches, just searching Eoghan Rua in the Irish newspaper archive and seeing what's coming up. And I found a wee advertisement in the classifieds in the Celt on the 1st of November, so a couple of weeks after all this. And it advertised the sale of a new song entitled General Eoghan Rua O'Neill, which was written by a guy called Tommy Gilronan of Breffni College in Killashandra. And copies of the song sheet music were available at 6p each with free postage. Not to be sniffed at. So I don't know whether anyone bought it or whether it got out there or not, I don't know. Now, interestingly, there's a note in the souvenir programme which stated that all the profits of the commemoration ceremonies will be devoted to the erection of a permanent memorial in Cavan Town to General Eoghan Rua O'Neill. So the plaque that's on the Abbey down there was noted in the Celt, intended to serve until a permanent monument is erected. And that sometime in the not too distant future, a fitting monument will be raised to the man whose memory was honoured by the nation on Sunday. So something larger seems to have been planned to commemorate Eoghan Rua, which never materialised. And maybe some of the reason for that was cost. Now, as I said earlier on, through parish fundraising, the committee collected £1,675. The other big earner was the admission to the tattoo and sale of programmes. That earned £1,575. They also raised £451 from admission to exhibitions, £224 from rent for trade stands, and £18 from the sale of flags. So that's about £3,900, just over £3,900, a lot of money. But then when we look at what the outgoings were, the plaque cost £50, that's not too bad. The army was paid £1,400. The tattoo cost £3,200. The exhibitions cost £250 to transport them and display them. The renting of the marquee and the grounds came to £165. The reception for the president and the dignitaries came to £314. Costumes and decorations £349. Printing of programmes £125, and publicity was £488. So that comes to £6,300. So they brought in 39 and there were 63. So now there may have been other monies coming in some other way, and I have to do more digging in that. So there may be other stuff in Coleman's paperwork that may come up something else as well. But as I say, that commemoration, that I assume a statue, never arrived. So, there's some reason for that. And just to conclude, the week-long commemoration for Eoghan Rua, O'Neill and Cavan between the 2nd and 9th of October in 1949 were really an extraordinary feat of planning and organisation. There was huge buy-in across not only Cavan but the island of Ireland. The fundraising was relentless and extremely efficient, as were the activities of the organising committee. The political and Roman Catholic Church hierarchy totally bought into the event, and large numbers of nationalists from the 6 counties attended as well, all agitating to join the newly established Republic of Ireland. And such a public and large gathering of people making such demands so close to the border must have given the Northern Government pause for thought. And I think by commemorating Eoghan Rua O'Neill in Cavan in 1949, the memory of a great nationalist hero was not just being celebrated, but political shots were being fired across the bows into the nearby 6 counties. Eoghan Rua O'Neill in the 1940s, as in the 1640s, remained a figurehead around whom the hopes of a nationalist movement in Ireland could still coalesce. Thank you.
Would anyone like to ask a question?
Catherine?
Yeah, I just, thanks for that, Brendan. It's a great talk. With us looking at Eoghan Rua this weekend, so just look at what happened 75 years ago as well.
Okay, folks, sorry.
As you outlined, it started off as a historical commemoration in the summer. By October, it's very political.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that flip come from? How do we know how the committee felt about it?
There's no paperwork about that, but I mean, I'm assuming that they were quite happy with it because they're taking advertisements in on their programme from the anti-partition movement and all these sort of things. I mean, your man O'Hanlon was on the committee and he's publishing this stuff in the Celt, and they own the Celt. So there seems to have been no issue with any of that really. And as I say, they're inviting down nationalist MPs from the north, bringing in people like Margaret Pearse, having people like Paddy Baxter speaking, who are well-known nationalists who would have no reason to be fond of English rule, and as I say, many of them had suffered during the War of Independence and Civil War. I would say they were probably quite happy in that way. I mean, that may be the reason why Hugh O'Reilly was dropped from it, because there was nothing particularly political about Hugh O'Reilly. Whereas Eoghan Rua, they could use him in some other way. I think he caught the imagination in a way that maybe O'Reilly didn't, and so decided to focus on him and make a point at the same time. Yes, Miho, sorry. Or Joe, sorry.
That was absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Miho.
Really enjoyable. Just one thing you say, and maybe it was as simple as finances, but any sense of discussion post-event as to why the more permanent memorial, given the trouble they've gone to and the big buy-in from everybody nationally across the board, is there any sense of discussion or nothing?
There's no paperwork. The paperwork that we have, that Coleman gave, is ledgers, it's figures, numbers, and that kind of thing. And bar the odd letter coming in like that funny one to the bank and stuff like that. But there's not really much stuff like that. So there's no. It just seems to be quietly forgotten about. And I did search the papers following 1945. I went a couple of years after that just to see was there any more word of it, and there was nothing about it. It just seems to have been silently put to bed. And that'll have to do him. So John Joe got his statue up there, but Eoghan Rua didn't. Sorry, Joe. Yeah.
No, just to say, I thought it was brilliant, Brendan, and very enjoyable, very interesting, and we all know names from it, etc. And personalities. So well done, Brendan. It just brought back a memory to me, and the whole day did. I recall my dear now long deceased parents chat about how they cycled over from Mountain Lodge, it would be down through Laris or Dogon, to attend it.
Yeah.
And they would have remembered it as a wonderful occasion.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, of course, would have come in cycling in those days to it. So it was just, it evoked that memory for me when you did say it. But it's a fascinating thing, and I suppose what our good colleague here says, it's fascinating that they didn't go on with the thing, and there was no subsequent talk.
No.
And was there much? There was enough. I suppose they had the mass and all that. Was there there was a fair bit of religiosity, I'd say, and suggestion that was there a fair notion that O'Reilly was something like a saint?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like there's an awful lot of religious iconography being used in the banners and stuff like that, the whole Sancta Maria thing and all that. I would say as well that I don't think I mentioned it there, but in the Celt on the 8th of October, the day before the big day, there's notes in the paper saying, like, say, you know, in the Ballyhaise news, people from Ballyhaise who are driving in, park at St. Pat's. You know, don't bring your vehicle into town. There's trains coming in at this time. Stewards, be at the De La Salle school at 8 a.m. Get ready to go wherever you have to go. So these are being put into all the you know, parish or town news bits saying people from this area stop there. People from out that area, I don't know where people from East Cavan would have been told to stop. The bikes would have been a different thing, I suppose, but the cars are being told to park in certain places and not to bring them into town on that day. And then the trains, I say, would have been flat out.
Senator Baxter's wife had been a runner for Michael Collins in Dublin. She worked in the post office. Senator Baxter and their daughter just died, was buried there a few weeks ago.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Up in Winchester Connacht.
Oh, okay. Right.
She had lived up there all her life. She was 90 when she's just died a few weeks
Okay,
ago.
I didn't know that.
One linked with that time. And I was aware, there's a lovely book, and you'd be more than aware of it, Brendan, written by a well-known Leitrim historian, the Republican story in Leitrim.
Oh yeah.
I read that, and there's a good bit about Baxter's brother being
Yeah.
And in fact, I think Baxter himself being participant.
Oh yeah, well, Michael Baxter was there because he was working with the railroad in Ballinamore. That's how he was there. Paddy went on the run during it. Their farm, I think, was burned or something was burned. His sister was sent to. She was in prison for a while as well, and the church where Michael Baxter is buried. I was at a wedding. What's the name of the church? It's kind of Ballymcgovern Church, whatever that church is called. I was at a wedding there during the summer, and I came out the door of the church, and he's buried literally outside the door. You cannot miss him, and he got that space, I'm quite sure, very deliberately. You know, like that this guy was not going to be forgotten. So I just saw him when I was coming out. Oh, there's your man, Michael Baxter. You know,
Kilnavart Church.
Kilnavart. Sorry, yeah. Kilnavart. Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Were the lectures from the 2nd to the 7th of October published? Are they available?
No. Well, there are bits. I mean, Hayes McCoy wrote a little bit. They're not really. They seem to have been, you know, classic conference papers, which are kind of good to give it a local thing, but not to publish afterwards, you know. And I'd say there are probably bits being used here, there, and everywhere, but not focused in the way that they were. Bar a couple of little bits. There's a wee bit in that programme that I think Dowling wrote, but then there's another bit then that O'Connell wrote. He didn't give it. I was surprised O'Connell didn't give a talk, but he wrote a wee bit about Breffni and a scale of chieftains. It's in that wee programme out there as well. But they're quite short. They're maybe 2 or 3 or 4 pages or something like that.
Just also from the Rinuccini flag.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. Is that still?
I don't know where it is now. I don't know, did it go back to the Dominicans in Tala? Hugh Fenning, was he?
I think it's actually the Royal Society of Antiquaries have it now, I think.
Con, would you know?
That's a different one. Is that a different one again?
Do you also have a
square one? Yeah.
Is that the square one? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe it's still there.
maybe I don't know. They also have the chair from the Confederation of Kilkenny, which I was very impressed with that in the society. Yeah.
Are there other commemorations that it can be compared with? I have something in my head that they had something in Clonmel. To celebrate.
For O'Neill as well, or
that sort of size of public organisation. You know, you're really thinking of the Eucharistic Congress or something.
Yeah. It is huge, and I'm assuming there were other things done. I mean, sure, there was that one that had the film that done the Battle of Ben Burbury enactment in 1945 in Dublin. So there were other things going on, but I don't think anything to to the scale of this. I mean, that's quite extraordinary. Even if 75,000 is exaggerated, there's I think there's one clip in one of the films, and I think they'll be rolling here afterwards, and one of them is on show out there as well. I think it's in the black and white one, when the thing is dispersed and people are walking down Farnham Street down this way, and I've never in my life seen as many people as was on Farnham Street that day. It's extraordinary how they moved. I mean, they're literally packed. And when you see them, like, they're sitting up on the walls and they're doing all this thing, you never get away with it now. But it's incredible level of organisation, and it all seems to have gone off. Now, they're not going to put on the front page, riots last night or whatever. But at the same time, there doesn't seem to be any particularly ill feeling or anything like that. It all seems to go off pretty well, because again, I was looking for that post in Celts going forward, even maybe a court case or something like that. But nothing seemed to have come up. It all seemed to have gone off fairly good humouredly, considering, as I say, like, a lot of the rhetoric was quite fiery. They seemed to be happy enough. They got it off their chest maybe and left it at that.
Anybody else?
Well, just one last thought.
Yeah,
So coming up in about 6 years, you're going to have the 450th anniversary-ish of Eoghan Rua's birth.
Yeah.
So it might be time to resurrect.
Get going now. The statues.
To resurrect the idea of some sort of proper memorial. I mean, it sounds like long overdue.
Absolutely.
And it's something to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
For working on for the next few years.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to say in 25 years' time it'll be 400. I'll be well out of it by then.
When are we going to get the statue of Eoghan Rua?
Why didn't we?
When are we going to get
When? We'll start working now, John. We'll start working now.
I think we should do that.
Well, you never know.
Politicians in the room might be able to influence.
Come on, Joe. There's an election coming now.
We're making a promise.
How much does something like that cost?
Sorry?
How much does it actually cost to put a statue in?
I've no idea. No idea. I mean, the plaque costs £50. So what the statue costs, I don't know. I know the one up there, they got the best guy in the country to do the John Joe one. I don't know how much that cost, but it was hardly too cheap now. But it's a great thing, and it's amazing actually. The one of John Joe, you see so many people Facebook profile pictures of people standing beside the statue. Loads of people get their picture taken with it, which is nice. It's a good thing to see that, I think.
I think that's everybody now. Again, thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you.